Over 1 million Aussies visit Bali every single year in a seemingly ritualistic holiday for people of all ages. Now, if you've ever been to developing countries as someone from Australia, America, or Europe, you always feel a bit weird as the realities of global inequalities materialize right in front of you. Bali feels a bit different though. Sometimes it feels like Westerners, particularly Australians, feel entitled to the ridiculous currency exchanges and relatively cheap prices.
Totally agree with Greg that Bali needs to be careful that it does not cut off its nose in higher prices. We enjoy Bali, but also enjoy Southeast Asia, and the price difference is astonishing. Although we enjoy going to Bali and we feel sorry to Balinese people that they need to put up with too many Australians, we feel that the Balinese at times see Aussies as wallets and not as people. Not all Aussies have stacks of cash ready to dispose of, and a lot of hardworking Aussies that need to save and scrimp to be able to afford to go on holidays.
And I mean, I get it. You spend all this money traveling and then this guy in Seminyak is trying to sell you a ring for 40 AUD.
Suddenly 5 to 15% service charge and a 10% tax. That never used to be Balian restaurants.
Call it what you want. Cultural imperialism, colonialism, touristification, Balinization. It all kind of refers to the same thing where Australians and others commodify and extract culture, land and resources in a way which permanently puts Balinese people into this subordinate dependent position. We go there with the expectation of cheap prices and them to be grateful for us that we're providing them with jobs. And of course, it's a story mired in the blood of millions.
There is now a critical examination of tourism and whether it was unwillingly foisted upon the Balinese during the New Order period.
Semua kader pemuda Pancasila di Sumatera Utara ini adalah pahlawan-pahlawan. Dari mulai memberantas komunisme,
Pemuda Pancasila menumpas komunis.
oh ya bunuh-bunuhan. Itu yang terjadi pada waktu itu.
People were stigmatized, no matter how good you are. But since you are related to someone who was a member of the big guy, then you are a bad person and you are a danger to the nation. But also you are a danger to our neighborhood. That's why we need to keep watch on you.
The 50s and early 60s was the height of political activity and consciousness amongst the Balinese people and broader Indonesian people. The Communist Party of Indonesia, or PKI, was the largest communist party at the time that wasn't in power, reporting a membership of 2 million people in 1963. Communist-adjacent organizations like the Central All Indonesians Worker Organization boasted memberships of up to 12 million in the same year. At its peak, the PKI had a reliable base of 20 million people, or a fifth of the population. In its program, it said explicitly,
"The workers' wage is low and real wages are steadily dropping in face of the increasing prices on articles of prime necessity. The number of the unemployed is continually increasing. The overwhelming majority of peasants are weighed down by the usurer's yoke and heavy taxes. The colonizers, plantation owners, and Indonesian landlords forcibly wrested from the peasant the land formerly belonging to the plantation owners, but which had been cultivated by peasants since the Japanese occupation. Indonesia will not be able to do away with poverty, backwardness, inequality, and indefensibility in face of imperialism. Imperialist rule and the survivals of feudalism will not be liquidated in Indonesia as long as the state power in the country is held by the feudal lords and compradors who are closely connected with foreign capital, because they want to retain the imperialist yoke and feudal survivals in the country, because they fear the Indonesian people most of all."
In 1965, after the communists were falsely framed for a coup attempt, the now President Suharto embarked on a campaign to eradicate the communists. As said by then Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt, yes, that Harold Holt, with 500,000 to 1 million communist sympathisers knocked off, I think it is safe to assume a reorientation has taken place. The 1965 Indonesian genocide would claim the lives of millions of communists, trade unionists, Gawani, ethnic minorities, and any others declared undesirable by the new regime. Knocking off those million or so communists, their leadership and party, would remove a key barrier to the development of Indonesian capitalism and foreign investment, the PKI. The PKI clearly was very much opposed to maintaining imperialism and exploitative conditions, and had the organizational ability to fight it. The killings were particularly ferocious in Bali, where the respective regional commander stated, "We are not satisfied with the dissolution of the PKI alone. We will thoroughly destroy it so that there will be no more crackdowns." Accordingly, 90% of the PKI in Bali were eliminated. Suharto, the president, had two jobs to do. rapidly depoliticize and stupefy the Balinese people and open Bali for business. He implemented a widespread propaganda campaign that, through education and media, sought to erase the period of heightened violence and dehumanize its victims. Films, according to one local, made him as a child believe that those people deserved to die.
Kita harus menganggap bahwa takdir orang Bali itu orang harmoni, orang cinta damai gitu, cinta kebudayaan. Apa yang kebudayaan adalah kata sakti, pariwisata budaya gitu adalah kata sakti untuk kemudian menubuhkan orang Bali bukan sebagai orang politis, bukan sebagai orang yang warga negara yang ikut berperan aktif. Bagi saya sangat relevansi. Gimana orang Bali bisa kritis ketika pada tahun sampai sekarang itu kita dibilang hati-hati kamu jangan masuk partai deh. Hati-hati kamu jangan terlalu berpolitik deh gitu. Hati-hati jangan kamu terlalu ke depan deh gitu.
By internalizing capitalism into the Balinese people's body and soul, by waging a mass depoliticization campaign, the basis for good, obedient, nice service workers was laid. Balinese people weren't to question where the fruits of their labor went, they were to act as peace-loving, culture-loving emissaries. By 1971, the World Bank had begun to devise master plans for international hotel chains and the Indonesian government. Throughout the 80s, Indonesia, and Bali specifically, relied heavily on multinational consortiums pumping billions of dollars of investment into the tourism sector. Annual visitors going to Bali skyrocketed from 6,000 in 1969 to up to 2 million people in 1997, generating windfall profits for foreign real estate, hotel, and tourist companies. The government, still to this day, disproportionately favors large multinational tourism corporations and has given significant leeway to foreign real estate investors. Given Indonesia's weak currency and the generally low socioeconomic status of the island, it has become known as a very cheap getaway for Western visitors. Paradise was built on the genocide of those in the way, through the unequal exchange between those local and multinationals. People are depending on tourism like opium. Tourism is fragile, and we have gone too far. We have been abandoning the fundamental things that mobilize the economy. Given the economy and its workers have become so dependent on selling their labor, their culture, their hospitality to tourists, the labor situation for the majority of Balinese and the many unskilled work migrants is precarious, where processes of precaritization shape unstable labor and life situations, where insecure wages and a high risk of losing one's job are common. Over 50% of the work in Bali is informal, a now permanent sector in the economy.
Bali has already have tourism more than 100 years. All the monies come, but 70% go out from Bali.
And this is the context in which we complain about prices being a little higher, closer to Australian prices. Now, look, is it unfair to square the 1965 mass killings on a 19 or 20-year-old in 2024? Obviously, but that's not what I want to do. What I do think is necessary is a bit of introspection. We provide them jobs, but only because our governments and the corporations we buy from helped foster a situation where Balinese people would need to be dependent on our tourist money to begin with. And as I said in the start, nothing exemplifies this disparity, this enforced dependence, like going to Bali and doing the typical trip yourself. Like, think of the booming villa construction sector in the Balinese real estate market right now. You go rent a luxurious villa stacked with a pool and aircon, and across the road from you are construction workers with no safety gear or equipment, bamboo for scaffolding, who seemingly sleep at the site on the concrete, building what seems to be yet another villa or hotel complex, a single room of which may be larger than their entire house. Of course, this isn't a unique site in the global south, but I think the customary Aussie Bali trip is unique in just how indifferent and entitled we can really be, right in the face of an ultimately exploitative system that our governments and their friends set up with their bloody hands. Unfortunately, mass tourism into Bali has cemented economic and cultural imperialism, whereby we've hyper-commodified the Balinese economy and their culture, where we get to enjoy in our opulent westernized flats, villas, and hotels. No wonder we feel like we're owed or entitled something. Subconsciously, they're below, outside of our spaces, but they're always there to access and use whenever and for whatever we want.